I flipped out on my fiancé for selling the gaming chair that my brother gifted me to pay for her gym membership. 33-year-old male here. I lost my 27-year-old brother due to terminal illness a couple of months ago. We were so close and had a lot in common. He was a gamer and had all kinds of gaming gear, including a gaming chair that he wanted me to have before he died. It's devastating because we were really hoping and had plans to spend Christmas together. This chair I consider special because it was my brother's favorite of all his gear, and it reminds me of him whenever I sit in it. I don't play much anymore. It just brings me closer to him to a degree I can't explain, and it brings me so much comfort. My fiancé, 31 and with me for 7 years, knew my brother. She knew how close we were, though she did have issues with me spending too much time with him after her and I got engaged, saying I should focus on us more, but my brother's health was at its worst at that time, and since my parents were overwhelmed, I felt the need to come and help out. We live in an expensive area. I pay so much for rent, it's a 2-bedroom apartment. She used to rent in this apartment before we met, and I moved in with her and my name was added to the lease. Now I pay the whole rent by myself. I suggested moving to a cheaper area, but she didn't welcome my suggestion. I keep the chair in my office, and days ago I found out that my fiancé, who's been out of a job and complaining about no longer being able to attend the gym, took the chair and sold it online to be able to pay for her next month's gym membership. When I found out, I flipped out hugely and had a very negative reaction. She told me that she was desperate for money, and after selling all she had no choice but to sell the chair. I reminded her of who this chair belongs to, but she said I already have tons of keepsakes from my brother, and so I shouldn't act like it was the end of the world. I asked her who she sold it to, and she told me that if I was going to buy it back, I needed to pay for it myself, but I put my foot down and said she had to pay. She also vented about her past eating disorders and her anxiety when it comes to keeping fit, and claimed that I was dismissing that she was struggling. I yelled at her and called her inconsiderate and selfish, and told her she should never have taken and sold any of my stuff for a gym membership when she literally could have kept working out from home. Also, the gym she attends is, in my opinion, way too expensive, and she knows that, but she stuck with it because of some trainer that she knows there. She said this trainer helped her a lot in the past and wants to continue attending the gym as long as the trainer is working in it. We have money issues because of A, her employment, and B, the expensive area we live in. A gym membership is not a necessity. I brought this up with her during the argument, and she accused me of not caring about her anxiety about her body, and brought up past arguments about her eating disorders, talking about how unsupportive I'd been. I myself am struggling with money since wedding planning pretty much took up all of my savings, but she wants an extravagant party, and so do her parents. She started crying as we argued. Then she went to stay with her mum, who tried to give me a stern talk about my attitude, but I didn't answer that and haven't been talking to my fiancé since then. Things haven't gotten better, and I got called overdramatic for reacting and treating my fiancé like that over a gaming chair. I feel guilty because I've never yelled at her in my life before. Of all things I have that belong to my brother, this chair is my favorite, and she knew that, but she claimed it was just there in my office and denied that I ever sit on it. Am I the jerk? Was I too hard on her? Some say I went overboard because this is a gaming chair and it was a bit childish of me to make a fuss over it, but I already explained why I had this reaction, aside from the fact that money is an issue we already have. She has mental issues and she blames them on me sometimes, saying I'm not being supportive and understanding enough just because I point out what she does wrong and don't let things slide like she expects me to. Because I feel like I should add more of her side to the conflict, she told me if, say, I was struggling and needed money and sold some items she had, then she wouldn't be mad at me. But I'm not sure since I'd never do such a thing. But still she insisted that no matter what I do, she'll always be supportive and understanding, just like I should be supportive and understanding of her struggle right now. That made me feel horrible because she had a breakdown and cried because of me. People have suggested that I sell the engagement ring if it comes to it. To be frank, the ring is worth so much more, monetarily of course. My whole issue is mainly about the sentimental value the chair has, and the fact that it helped me a lot during my grieving process. This whole thing just seems kind of sad and terrible for everyone involved, most of all the author. I can't see it going well for anyone. It sounds like money is very tough to come by, but she is disrespecting his property, specifically property with a massive sentimental value to him, in order to pay for a way to satisfy her disorder. And yes, she has a disorder, but she's using it as an excuse for doing bad things. It's pretty murky ground for us nominally mentally healthy people to comment on from the outside, but it's not great. Instead of using the money she had to obtain treatment that might help her more in the long run, it sounds like she's using it to pay some exploitative trainer. I can't see this ending well for the couple in question, and I'm sure that without outside help, either a cutting off of the engagement or an even worse relationship might be on the cards. There's no update on whether the gaming chair was repurchased by him. I hope it was, and that maybe his family stepped in to help him get it back if it was needed. Things like this are vitally important keepsakes from the ones who love us, and I don't know how I'd react if someone took something like this from me. Like I said, this situation seems more tragic than one that we can actually get hot and angry about. Everyone loses here. 2 weeks' notice in writing. My very first job was working fast food at Wendy's. I was 16, and most of my co-workers were also teenagers. There was always work to be done. If you have time to lean, you have time to clean, etc. But working afternoons and evenings with a bunch of teens, there was also plenty of goofing around. Work wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't really that bad either. It was tolerable. Then we got a new manager. This guy was in his 40s and he was a lifer. He was super strict and was about having no fun at work at all. Unfortunately, I became his favorite work vessel because I was easier to control than some of my co-workers. He leaned heavily on me to pick up the slack that the others left. It got real old real fast. Why should I work more than everyone else for the same pay? Why should I be stuck doing more tasks than my co-workers who continue to goof off? I voiced my concerns to the manager, but nothing changed. He was usually busy hiding in the office with the mirrored glass windows, just watching everyone. He'd only surface on occasion to tell me to work harder and give everyone else a free pass. Eventually, I had enough. One day I marched into his office and demanded that either I get a raise or for him to hold everyone else to the same standards. He didn't go for that. I told him to consider that conversation my 2 weeks' notice then. He said he needed that in writing. I ripped a piece of paper out of a notebook on his desk and I wrote something along the lines of, "This is my 2 weeks' notice," with my name underneath. I walked outside his office, spit on the paper, and stuck it to his mirrored glass window. He could look at it all he wanted that way. I felt amazing. For the next 2 weeks, the manager kept letting me know that it wasn't too late to change my mind about quitting. He kept alluding to a raise, but never actually offered it. For the doubters, yes, this was my personal experience. I started sometime in fall 2006 and I quit in the summer of 2007. Also, I'm aware that 2 weeks' notice is a courtesy, not a necessity. It just seemed wrong to me to not give notice, and 2 wrongs don't make a right. And you were in the right, my friend. Also, it doesn't sound like he gave you any sort of reason to stay, even as much as a promise that he'd get on the other workers' backs, instead of just driving his one most docile staff member that hard. Your boss sounds like a tool, and a good reminder that people quit their bosses, not their jobs. The fact that he only got on the back of the person most willing to listen, and that he didn't even discipline you after the way you quit, suggests he was kind of lacking any sort of ability to control his staff. I searched desperately for any kind of update on what happened to Wendy's after your departure, but alas, we shall never know how this jerk's managerial tenure played out after the author left. I'm sure he didn't exactly make it into the top 1 restaurant in that chain. Also, I think the author's manner of quitting is excellent. The nerve of ripping up the guy's stationery and maliciously complying with his request inside his office, and then walking out like a badass is fantastic. It's always the quiet ones who are the most spectacular when they do snap. The wise man fears the anger of a gentleman. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for calling my fiancé lazy for wanting to be a stay-at-home wife? I, a 42-year-old male, am engaged to who I feel is the one, a 33-year-old lady. We've been dating for just over 3 years and I proposed last month. Last night, after another session of wedding planning, my fiancé asked if I'd be alright with her being a stay-at-home wife. At first, I laughed because I thought she was joking, but she was actually very serious. Up until I proposed to her, She was just filled with so much ambition, and she was actually actively going for a better paying position at her company. I fell in love with her level of motivation. I'd met her when our two companies had to work on a project together for another company. I thought we had the same mentality, and I felt pretty blindsided by her sudden change of heart in terms of her future goals. All her friends and our mutual friends are pretty ambitious people. Even the stay-at-home mums are very driven in terms of child rearing. Feels like her sudden desire not to work came out of left field. She told me not to laugh and said she wants to be a stay-at-home wife. I asked her why, as we both make pretty good money at our jobs, and we can't afford our current lifestyle with just one income. She says it's because I make a lot more, which is true, I make about 40% more than her, and we could just scale back our lifestyle, and said, "It's been on my mind a lot. I think working 9 to 5 just isn't for me." I asked her if she was being serious, and she confirmed that she was. I said that I'm not comfortable with that idea, and said maybe if we have kids, she could be a stay-at-home mum. But I'm not cool with her being a stay-at-home wife, and she said that I was just being manipulative, since we're both child-free. But I just said that as a hypothetical, since I'm not at all okay with being the sole breadwinner. Like anything could happen to me if I was the only one bringing in income. Even though I don't work in a dangerous job by any means, I sit at a computer, anything could happen. Life is kinda wild like that, isn't it? That divulged into a pretty heated argument, with her saying that I should support her dreams. She never stated what she wants to do with her staying at home, even though I did ask. She just kept reaffirming that, "I know I'll be a lot happier if I was a stay-at-home wife." So this is where I may be the butthole. In the heat of the moment, I said, "Where is this coming from? Why is it your dream to be a stay-at-home wife? Is it your dream to be lazy?" She got really upset at that and had gone to her mother's and said, "We'll talk about it more when you calm down." Since a lot of people ask about our home life, we have a rotating chore list. So like one day I'd be the one to do the laundry, and the next day it would be my fiancé. For example, same with groceries and cooking. It's split pretty evenly, and we do make sure to check off all the items on our to-do list, as we're both pretty fixed about keeping a clean living space. Honestly, I enjoy doing chores. It lets me just zone out and relax and work towards a goal, even if that goal is simply load dishwasher, if that makes any sense. I'll be real here, I don't want her to be a stay-at-home wife. I'm not okay with being the sole breadwinner, and I don't want to support this dream of hers. I want a partner in life, not a dependent doing nothing productive with their days. So, am I an unsupportive jerk of a fiancé? Well, you may be a bit of a tactless nitwit for just belting out, "Is it your dream to be lazy?" But your fiancé isn't doing herself any favors by being so cagey and dancing around the fact that honestly it just seems like she wants to stay at home and do nothing all the time. If she had a dream or a side gig that she wanted to try out properly, most of us who have relatively okay incomes are more than alright with supporting our partner's dreams and seeing if they pan out for a while. But it's really tough to not feel resentment about a spouse who just sits at home all day and does nothing. Stay-at-home motherhood is definitely a job. And unless you're running a house that requires a lot of day-to-day caretaking? Look, I'm trying to find literally any way to give his fiancé the benefit of the doubt and coming up blank. The closest I could come up with is maybe she developed some sort of burnout, as he mentioned that she was previously very ambitious and work-oriented. Perhaps someone else in the comments can enlighten me as to some other reason she might be feeling this way. Otherwise, it's very hard to sympathize with the author's partner. "You're my son's girlfriend's sister, you must do as I say." My sister is married to a man whose mother was a stay-at-home mum, who decided that adulthood through middle age is still too early to stop overparenting her children, and is also very opinionated about what everyone else should be doing. Especially when it comes to parenting, because she's wonderful at it, apparently. To keep the peace, people in my family let her get away with it. I do not. This greatly upsets her. Back when our children were in elementary school, and before Sis and hubby were formally married, we all lived in the same neighborhood. I'd go to my sister's for a visit, and afterward we'd both walk to the school to pick them up at the end of the day. The mother-in-law insisted on coming too. Sis didn't think that was a hill to die on, so I kept my mouth shut. One day, Her Overly Critical Highness decided that she didn't like my child's coat, and that we needed to fix that, meaning that I would have to spend money to buy another that met her approval. I loved the coat, and also I didn't give a crap about her preferences, so I told her that there was no need to talk about it. She kept it up constantly for almost a week, because comments like, "I don't care if you like it or not," and "I'm not your kid, and even if I were, I'd still tell you to back off," were too vague for her to get the hint that I wasn't going to be pushed around. I tried ignoring her, tried changing the subject, she was just fixated. Finally, I turned around and told her flat out that I didn't give two flying craps in space, what she liked, and that it was none of her fricking business. We're not even related. She got fed up with my stubbornness and advanced on me, poking me hard in the chest over and over. "I don't care if you're related to me or not. You're my son's girlfriend's sister, and you will do what I tell you." I warned her not to make physical contact again, and she started screaming and sobbing, telling everyone in a 2-mile radius that she was being bullied and threatened just because she was trying to be helpful. I laughed and walked out while she was being comforted. An hour later, I had about 20 calls and texts from people telling me to apologize to her to keep the peace, suggesting strongly that I should go out and buy another coat immediately so she wouldn't be upset anymore. Even one threatening to cash me outside. They've always been her worst enablers. Every moment with them was like a mashup between a telenovela and an episode of Trailer Park Boys. To tell the truth, my family had some pretty messed up dynamics, and am, I guess, the scapegoat. They're not much better than she is, and it gave them even more reasons to scapegoat me. Birds of a feather and all that. My sister has now been with her husband for 25 years, so I have tons of stories about this woman. Like one time about the time my nephew and nieces couldn't come to my daughter's birthday party because I refused to invite her and my sister's boyfriend's mother's nephew's son. Her nephew and his family moved into their downstairs apartment, and he had a son that none of us had had a chance to meet yet. She didn't want him to feel left out, so she insisted that he had to come. He was 11, the rest of the kids were 6 and younger, and of course, she had to come to keep an eye on him. She had fished for an invite the week before, and I didn't bite. This was her, "well, of course I have to go now" solution. Or the time my baby shower was cancelled because I preferred to have my friends as guests instead of my sister's boyfriend's mother, plus mother-in-law and sister-in-laws, almost all of whom I'd never met. Or the time there was a Royal Rumble elimination-style cage match. 1 against 12 because I decided to use my tax refund for my own dental care instead of a new TV. How about the family blow-up because I refused to give her half the bottles of shampoo I'd brought at half price. Okay, people are asking me for more, so more they shall receive. One day, my sister called to say that she was dropping by and showed up with the mother-in-law in tow. I was in the middle of washing dishes, and she got all excited when she saw that I was using a handled sponge that dispensed dishwashing liquid, because she had never seen one before. She asked me for it outright. I pointed out that if I gave her mine, I wouldn't have one. I told her where I got it and how much it was so she could buy her own. She didn't want to buy her own. To be fair, it's a pretty upscale place called the Dollarama. The real good stuff went for $3 there. It was a mall parking lot and 6 houses away from the house she was living in at the time. It might have taken her a whole 10 minutes. She kept bringing it up, so I told them they had to leave. They didn't believe me at first, but I told them I wasn't in the mood to argue about it and it wasn't going to happen, so it would be best for everyone involved. Then the calls started when they got back to my sister's house. How dare I put that poor woman out of the house for asking for something so small? What a ridiculous reason. How could I embarrass her like that? Blah blah blah. Apparently the consensus was that I'd have to make it up for her by relinquishing the sponge. It was the only reasonable solution. Alas, I'm unreasonable. She did not get the sponge. I refused to buy myself the same thing twice so that she wouldn't have to go to the trouble of doing it once, the poor dear. I don't even know how I can live with myself sometimes. Before then, I'd been made aware that I was worse than the leader of the Third Reich since I had the nerve to invite my own mother to go prom dress shopping and left my sister's boyfriend's mother out. I should have thought about how her lack of daughters meant that she would not be able to celebrate important mother-daughter milestones like that. I'm so selfish. And after the aforementioned sponge incident, I evolved into super-duper worse than the leader of the Third Reich. I stopped being around her at all a few years ago when I went to North Carolina with my family. Maybe I should start talking to her again. It could jumpstart my shot at internet fame. Cue my brain screaming "No!" at me. I think we should acknowledge here that not once did the author ask for clarification on whether they or the mother in question were the jerk. But you know what? After that admittedly very entertaining barrage of crazy stories about this woman, We can draw our own judgments. It does sound like the rest of the family weren't great either, but then again, I don't know what I'd have been like if I'd had to endure 30 years of that with a family matriarch. I think I probably would have fled the state as well. So at worst, I could say that the author seems a little combative, but honestly, when that is what you're up against, that likely makes you a hero more than anything. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.